Devon's first glimpse of the bizarre truth arrived at an underground club on the east side of the city. The night was humid, sticky as candy floss, and the crush of bodies seemed to swirl in an almost dreamlike dance. Neon lights streaked across the walls. People were not just moving to the beat, they were melding with it, eyelids half closed, bodies aligned perfectly with the throbbing bass line. Devon wasn't on the dance floor, though. He stayed behind the stage, fiddling anxiously with a set of cables he barely knew how to handle. For weeks, he had been working as a low-level assistant to Elijah Marius, the ambitious music producer whose mysterious new record label, Hexen Records, was making waves. Devon's job was nominally about sound support, but in truth, he spent most of his time delivering coffees and running errands for perpetually stressed-out engineers. He remembered when he first heard about Elijah Marius. The man had shot to stardom with an uncanny ability to attract top talent. Rumour had it that major hits followed him like loyal pets, always guaranteed to become earworms in unsuspecting audiences. But this night's performance was unlike anything Devon had seen. Even from his vantage point, well behind the stage, he sensed something unnatural in the crowd. Between strobing lights, the dancers seemed to move in eerie unison. Hundreds of people with their faces pointed up to the DJ booth, mouths parted in the exact same way. The music didn't just make them dance, it molded them into a single pulsing entity. After the set ended, Elijah appeared in the back, passing Devon with a critical gaze. "Did you notice anything?" the producer asked in his resonant baritone. When Devon shook his head and mumbled about the crowd's unusual synergy, Elijah's face revealed the slightest flicker of triumph. "Good," he murmured, before disappearing again into the bowels of the club. Something in that moment sent an icy tingle through Devon's spine. It was as if Elijah craved confirmation that the crowd was locked in a shared trance. Devon stepped away, uncertain what revelations might come if he stayed in the man's presence any longer. 2 days later, Devon found himself in Hexen Records' main office. The building's lobby looked like the inside of a futuristic cathedral. Glass walls and floors gave the space a crystalline sheen, and polished jade pillars cast green reflections everywhere. Echoes of distant music slipped through hidden speakers, a subdued lullaby that made Devon feel pleasantly numb. He was stocking a small fridge near the receptionist's desk when he overheard 2 employees chatting about the label's next big release. "They say the track is otherworldly," whispered the first. "Binaural elements, hush-hush testing, people are calling it a cerebral anthem." The other employee shrugged. "Elijah always says we're on the cusp of a new frontier in audio. I heard something about ancient patterns in percussion that can unlock, I don't know, something about bridging the conscious and subconscious." Devon couldn't help but eavesdrop. Like many aspiring musicians, he had grown up believing in the raw power of a brilliant track. But the words ancient patterns sounded archaic and potent. He thought about the club, how the rhythmic pulses had seized the crowd. The memory felt heavier now, draped in that eerie glow. He wanted to write it off as marketing hype or nonsense, but the employee's hushed tones rang with a seriousness that unnerved him. Minutes later, with the fridge refilled, Devon made his way past the glossy corridors to deliver a USB drive containing who knows what to Elijah's private office. The office was dimly lit, with an entire wall made of tinted glass overlooking the city. Elijah sat behind a sleek black desk, wearing his signature half-smile that never quite reached his piercing eyes. Devon handed over the drive, and the producer examined it with a disconcerting intensity. "Feel that?" Elijah asked, holding the small device up in the tinted light. When Devon frowned in confusion, Elijah continued. "Music used to be a conduit for the soul, a way to connect with something greater. We're going back to that. We might just revolutionize how society experiences life." His voice lingered on the word life, as though it carried multiple meanings. Devon shuffled his feet. "Sir, do you need anything else?" Elijah's smile lost its warmth. "Not right now, Devon." He placed the drive into a small locked drawer. "But keep your eyes and ears open. We're entering a bold era. I might have a role for you soon." Before Devon could interpret that statement, Elijah waved him out of the office. The chance to glimpse the new release arrived unexpectedly. Late one night, a text message pinged on Devon's phone from an unknown number. The message read, Studio 4, tomorrow, 2 a.m., Marius's instructions. The next night, he crept through the labyrinth of corridors in Hexan Records, passing silent mixing stations and dark offices. Studio 4 lay at the end of an unmarked hallway, tucked away as if it were a secret best left undiscovered. Through the small window in the door, Devon saw 4 figures, Elijah Marius, 2 engineers, and a woman he recognized as Aurora Ray, a reclusive singer rumored to have a voice that could crack the sky. Hesitantly, Devon knocked. Elijah opened the door, eyebrows raised. Then he waved Devon inside without a word. The studio was lit only by the glow of monitors and the flickering red lights of recording equipment. At the heart of the room lay a massive mixing console, so elaborate it looked like something from a spaceship. One of the engineers manipulated a track on the screen, an undulating waveform pulsing like a heartbeat. The music seeped from the speakers in faint bursts, a swirl of tribal percussion, haunting vocals, and a strange underlying hum that made Devon's insides shudder. "Devon," Elijah said softly, "listen carefully. After all, what we do here is on behalf of the label. But more than that, it's on behalf of an awakening. Music's power goes beyond mere entertainment." As if on cue, Aurora Ray let out a melodic vocal run that made the hairs on Devon's arms stand. The track looped around her voice, weaving it into the percussion. A wave of warmth washed over Devon, and he felt a sudden urge to close his eyes and surrender to the sound. It took an effort of will to remain alert. While Elijah chatted quietly with Aurora, Devon edged closer to the mixing console. On the screen, he spotted cryptic text files labeled Sigil Percussion, Nightfall Ritual, and Evoke. The engineer adjusting the controls wore an unnervingly blank expression. When Devon leaned in to ask a harmless question, the man didn't respond at first, as though he had to remember how to speak. Then, in a flat voice, the engineer said, "The frequencies must align with the runic imprint. If there's a mismatch, the effect diminishes. We need synergy." Devon blinked, perplexed, but no further explanation was offered. Instead, the engineer returned to tinkering, sliding various knobs to fine-tune the track. Every slight adjustment sent a ripple through Devon's body, as though the music was rewriting the beat of his heart. Elijah beckoned for Devon to stand near Aurora. "You might not be an experienced musician, but you have an ear," he murmured. "Tell me how it makes you feel." With that, Aurora sang a lullaby-like phrase into the microphone, her voice layered with something that sounded like a whispered incantation. The result was an oral tapestry that shimmered with possibility, until it abruptly cut out, leaving a hush as tangible as a thick fog. Devon opened his mouth to speak, but he could barely form words. It felt like the track was still inside him, thrumming in his veins, even though the monitors were silent. Elijah's eyes shone with satisfaction. Soon the world will know. 3 days later, Hexam Records announced a massive listening party for the upcoming single. It will be a private event with a carefully curated guest list, influencers, critics, celebrities, and a few random winners of a social media contest. The venue was an abandoned factory once used for manufacturing parts for old record players, an irony likely not lost on Elijah. On the day of the event, Devon was tasked with helping set up. The factory's cavernous hall stood disguised under shimmering drapes, laser projectors and arrays of speakers hung on complex trusses. He wove between technicians, trying not to get in anyone's way, all the while noticing black cables that formed a pattern on the floor. A circular, labyrinth-like shape that twisted across the cement. The guests started trickling in around 10 p.m., dressed in edgy outfits that seemed to reflect the aura of secrecy surrounding the occasion. Cameras flashed, social media feeds buzzed. Dev remained on the fringe, unsettled by the sense of imminent upheaval. He recalled fragments of the conversation in the studio, references to synergy, runic imprints, and some intangible effect that seemed to warp consciousness. He couldn't help but notice that many of these elite guests held giddy expression as if they were about to witness a moment that would go down in history. Shortly before midnight, the lights dimmed, and Elijah ascended a raised platform in the center of the circular pattern on the floor. A hush fell over the crowd. In that silence, something akin to electricity crackled in the air. Elijah spoke into a sleek microphone, his silky voice echoing through the building. "Welcome," he said, "to a new era in human experience. For too long, music has been background noise or fleeting entertainment. Tonight, we return it to its rightful place. A bridge between worlds, between what we know and what we have yet to discover." A subtle drumbeat kicked in, its rhythm following a strange pattern. 5 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause. Devon's heart pounded in his chest. He glanced warily at the crowd, and his fears were confirmed. People were swaying, eyes unfocused, lips parted in anticipation. The beat grew louder, layering in triple-time hi-hats and a low, rumbling drone that was more felt than heard. Then Aurora Rie's voice pierced the atmosphere with notes so crystalline they appeared to shimmer in midair. Evan recognized that mesmerizing lullaby from the late-night studio session. With each note, the cables on the floor hummed, and bright turquoise lights arced along their lengths, creating a massive, glowing sigil around Elijah. The crowd collectively sighed, as if each person had become a mere vessel for the music surging through them. Devon felt it too, a dizzying wave, tugging at his consciousness, inviting him to let go. He struggled to hold on to his sense of self, grappling to remain alert. Yet just as he felt his mind slipping, he caught sight of something at the corner of the factory, a faint swirl of black mist drifting into the space. The swirling mist took shape, weaving around the edges of the circle. It was as if the music was calling forth more than just a hypnotized crowd. It was summoning something otherworldly. See? From deep within the ring of speakers, an inaudible chord struck, resonating in the minds of everyone present. Devon saw the swirl of black mist coalesce into a shape that dripped menace. The shape was half shadow, half intangible force, pulsating with each measure of the track. Whispers passed through the crowd as some of the guests seemed to notice the swirling darkness, yet they remained entranced, too spellbound to react with fear or caution. Slowly, the black mist approached the center, drawn toward Elijah and his glowing sigil. Devon's stomach knotted. He inched back, scanning for a way to stop the show. If the track was fueling a summoning of something dreadful, he had to act. Yet he had no plan, no leverage. The event staff, equally ensnared by the beat, would be of no help. When Aurora Ray belted a sequence of words that sounded bizarrely archaic, the swirling mist responded by shaping into a vague, writhing entity. Its eyes, if one could call the twin glints in the darkness eyes, scanned the crowd with an almost ravenous curiosity. Still on the outskirts of the circle, Devon realized the DJ booth was operational. If he could disrupt the audio, maybe he could break the chain. He knew how to cut power to a deck or cause a feedback loop, but he'd need to get there undetected. Heart pounding, he ducked behind a row of speakers and scurried along the perimeter. Around him, revelers began chanting along with Aurora's melody, their words matching the cryptic refrain. Nosceri omnia, orderi omni. The reverb made it echo like a prayer in a forgotten language. Reaching the booth, Devon was relieved to find it only partially guarded by a single staffer. The man stared blankly at the monitors, as if lost in a daydream. Devon angled himself behind the man, scanning the console. The main feed was locked, but he found a separate control for the channel that carried Aurora's voice. A simple flick of a switch would at least silence her singing. As he approached the switch, a strong hand gripped his wrist. "What are you doing?" hissed a woman's voice. Devon turned to see Aurora Ray herself. At this close range, her eyes glowed unnaturally, reflecting that swirling black mist. "Elijah told me about you," she whispered with a faint melodic lilt. "He said you had potential, but you've chosen to resist the music. Why?" Devon gasped in breath, pulling free of her grip. "Because something is wrong here," he said, forcing a steadiness into his voice he didn't truly feel. "Music isn't meant to enslave people or summon whatever that thing is." Aurora cocked her head, a pitying smile flitting across her features. "You don't understand the gift we're offering." She raised her hands, a swirling pattern of light coursing across her palms. The luminous tendrils shot toward Devon, brushing against his temples with a warmth that threatened to lull him. But focusing on the horror unspooling in the center of the factory kept him anchored. He reached blindly for the control panel and yanked the switch. Instantly, Aurora's voice cut out from the speakers, replaced by a crackling silence. She gasped, the shimmering arcs fading from her fingers. But the drum beats still pounded, and the ephemeral darkness near Elijah continued to take shape, writhing atop the glowing sigil. Aurora stumbled backward with a snarl. "Elijah, we need the vocals back." Elijah turned, a cold fury contorting his formerly calm features. He thrust a hand outward, and a ripple of energy surged through the factory. The chanting crowd faltered, but then resumed their mantras under the pounding percussion. Devon saw that the main portion of the track was still playing through a separate channel. Without Aurora's vocals, the summoning appeared incomplete, yet the black mist remained, roiling in agitation. Elijah seemed torn between continuing the ritual and dealing with the disruption Devon had caused. "Devon." Elijah's voice reverberated with authority. "You don't know what you're interfering with. This is bigger than you, bigger than me. It's elemental, cosmic. Music is our gateway to the intangible. Our label was founded to harness that power. Why do you think we named it Hexen? We are weaving the ancient and the modern together." The swirling entity near the sigil flared up, making a high-pitched keening that echoed in the old factory rafters. Many of the guests collapsed to their knees, clutching their ears. With every measure, the thing seemed to grow more frenetic. That was when Devon realized the partial nature of the summoning had left it unstable. If it wasn't completed in time, it might tear the entire place apart, or worse, break free in a twisted, half-formed state. Scrambling across cables, Devon sprinted toward the center, where the largest speakers boomed. If he could somehow short-circuit the entire system, it might sever the track for good. He kicked a metal crate into the air, hoping to break the cables, but the crate only clanged pitifully off a steel support beam, not landing anywhere near the wiring. Elijah advanced, each step resonating with commanding energy. "You cannot stop this," Elijah insisted, overshadowing the thunderous bass. "This power is unstoppable. Mind control, devotion, ecstasy. It's all part of the same primal force that humankind yearned for millennia ago. I only harnessed it, gave it structure. With it, I'll break our limitations and ascend." Devon refused to cower. He spotted a fuse box behind a half-curtained rig. One final attempt might just end the entire spectacle. Forcing himself to ignore Elijah's fierce presence, he dashed, weaving through the patch cords. Arriving at the fuse box, he yanked the door open. Seconds before he grabbed the main switch, a jolt of unseen force slammed him against the wall. Pain radiated through his shoulder. Elijah stood, arms raised, eyes glowing, channeling the same arcane electricity that Aurora had demonstrated. In the corner of his vision, Devon saw Aurora approach him. She still looked furious, but perhaps there was a flicker of doubt in her expression. While Elijah maintained the pressure pinning Devon, Aurora slid up to him, voice trembling. "Don't you see he's risking everything?" she asked uncertainly. "If the connection remains incomplete, the force he's summoned could ravage us. But if we finish it, we'll have power beyond measure." Devon coughed, rallying every ounce of resolve. He locked eyes with her. "And at what cost? Free will is precious. Music should bring joy, not blind obedience. If we can't control this power now, we'll be its slaves. Don't let him sacrifice our humanity for the sake of some twisted ambition." A tremor ran through Aurora. Her gaze flicked to where the shadowy entity flailed, threatening to snap free. Then, abruptly, she turned and struck Elijah's outstretched arm with a wave of harmonic energy. His hold on Devon dissipated. Devon scrambled upright, lunging for the fuse box's main switch. Elijah roared in protest, but Aurora matched his fury, initiating a clash of melodic magic that crackled across the air. Just as Elijah tried to regain control, Devon slammed down the switch with a resounding thud. Total darkness consumed the space as the entire sound system shut off. The industrial hum, the stage lights, and the swirling lasers all died. For a brief moment, the only sounds were ragged breaths and the frantic gasps of people snapping out of their trance. Devon could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Then, lightning-like streaks of shadow shot through the air, accompanied by the entity's shriek. Without the music, it was a lost soul in the wrong dimension, a half-manifested force scrabbling to maintain form. Slowly, its darkness evaporated, drawn back to wherever it had been conjured from, leaving only the faint tang of ozone and a trembling hush. "Come back!" cried Elijah, his voice rasping in desperation. Yet no response came. The swirling blackness vanished. Aurora trembled under the weight of her own choice, though the ephemeral glow of her eyes gradually dimmed. As if she were an instrument slowly powering down, the cables on the floor now lay inert, dull black lines in the darkness of the empty factory. A sea of confused murmurs rose from the disoriented guests. Some demanded an explanation. Others stumbled in various states of shock. Gradually, emergency backup lights flickered on, bathing the aftermath in a sickly yellow glow. Devon surveyed the chaos, expensive dresses ripped, smartphones strewn across the floor, dozens of high-profile individuals looking as if they had awakened from a surreal nightmare. At the center stood Elijah Marius, shoulders slumped in defeat, his hair disheveled and his gaze hollow. For a brief instant, he locked eyes with Devon, and something like rivalry and grudging respect flashed across his face. Sirens wailed in the distance, perhaps called by frightened neighbors who heard the unnatural echoes. Hexen Records employees rushed around, trying to minimize the damage and prevent the scandal from leaking. Aurora, regaining her composure, tilted her head at Devon. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice still resonant but laced with regret. "I wanted to believe his vision was pure." Devon nodded, uncertain how to respond. They looked away from each other, drawn into separate orbits by the confusion swirling around them. In the days that followed, rumors about Hexen Records ran wild across social media. Outlandish conspiracy theories emerged. Some blamed the entire fiasco on special effects gone awry, while others insisted Elijah Marius had dabbled in forbidden witchcraft. The official word from the label offered a vague explanation of technical difficulties at the listening party and postponed the single's release indefinitely. Behind the scenes, though, it was clear that Elijah's grand ambitions had been shattered. The harnessing of supernatural rhythms was too volatile, too feral to be contained by the mortal ear. Devon found himself abruptly unemployed. The label's leadership quietly liquidated staff as they reeled from the scandal. Freed from the building's glass corridors and cryptic experiments, Devon reflected on the extraordinary events he had witnessed. Music could, indeed, enchant minds, but only because it touched some deeper chord within the soul. And playing games with ancient energies, forging them into weaponized melodies, had almost destroyed an entire room full of people. Reflecting on the final confrontation, Devon sometimes wondered if Elijah's idealistic statements about bridging worlds were ever sincere or just a megalomaniac's excuse to dominate the masses. He supposed it didn't matter. The attempt to merge incantations with modern production had collapsed on itself. During that time, Aurora Ray disappeared from the public eye. Some said she fled the country to find spiritual healing. Others whispered she was reinventing herself in a small coastal city with a fresh identity. As for Elijah, sightings placed him wandering near obscure acoustic festivals, still searching for the key to unlocking music's secret potential. The once celebrated star had lost credibility in mainstream circles, but held an aura of dark allure in underground rumors. Some believed he was preparing a comeback, biding his time until he found a stable way to conjure the force that had nearly overrun them all. Devon would often sit in his modest apartment, strumming a battered guitar he'd owned since high school. The simple chords and honest acoustics reminded him that the truest magic of music lay in its ability to connect people, not to control them. Notes that rose out of genuine emotion could still radiate a kind of wonder. Only it was a wonder shared openly, a gift of expression rather than manipulation. Occasionally he'd play a song in a small cafe and see a flicker of enchantment in the audience's eyes. And that was enough. He'd do his best to leave behind the harrowing horrors of the label while still acknowledging its lessons. For a long while, Devon had nightmares of the swirling darkness, a malignant shape produced by layered beats and runic chants. In those dreams, the entity would call to him with a dissonant melody, urging him to bring it into the world fully. Yet he always woke with his heart racing and an unrelenting resolution never to let that happen again. If there was an enchanted beat that could truly unify minds, it would be one guided by mutual respect and shared humanity, not by an insidious thirst to control. He vowed that if he ever produced music of his own, it would be imbued with purpose and authenticity. No sigils or manipulative frequencies allowed, because in the end, music's magic should illuminate. And Devon, holding that tattered guitar, felt certain that even if Elijah Marius somehow found another path to harness cosmic resonance, there would always be those who stood guard, ready to pull the plug.